The human heart is the wildest frontier. It is there that hatred draws its deepest lines, and love builds its most defiant bridges. The winter of 1887 descended upon the Montana Territory with a frozen fury. For Eliza Cartwright, the cold was more than just weather. It was a judgment. Her father, August, stood like a statue carved from ice, his face a mask of righteous anger. His voice, when it came, was like the cracking of a frozen river. "You have shamed the memory of your mother. You are no daughter of mine." The heavy oak door of their ranch house slammed shut, its sound swallowed by the howling wind. Eliza was left outside in the heart of the blizzard, wearing nothing but a thin cotton dress, her future as bleak and white as the landscape before her. The world she knew had just vanished behind that door. The wind was a physical thing, a cruel hand that pushed and tore at her, stealing the breath from her lungs. Each step was a battle against the rising drifts, the biting cold seeping through her thin shoes and into her very bones. This was not the father she remembered from her childhood, the man who taught her how to ride and read the stars. Grief had poisoned him, twisting his love into a bitter, unyielding hatred. He was consumed by the ghosts of the past, by the memory of the Crow warriors who had taken his first wife. Now, in his eyes, Eliza had willingly consorted with the same darkness that had shattered his world. A single memory fought against the encroaching cold, the face of Chayton. His smile was a small, warm ember in the blizzard of her mind. She remembered his quiet strength, the way his eyes held the wisdom of the plains. He had taught her that the Great Spirit resides in all living things, that every rock and tree has a story. What would he think of this spirit now, this merciless white demon that sought to claim her? The love that had been her secret joy, her only escape from the suffocating piety of her home, had become her death sentence. She clutched the memory of him, a fragile shield against the storm. Her strength began to fail, her limbs grew heavy, her thoughts slow and fragmented. The world dissolved into a swirl of white and gray, the howling of the wind fading to a distant hum. There was no anger left, only a profound and hollow sadness. She stumbled one last time and fell, her body sinking into the soft, unforgiving snow. It was almost peaceful, this silent surrender. As her eyes fluttered closed, she was just a small forgotten shape in the vast, indifferent wilderness, another secret the Montana winter would soon bury. Her fight was over. The memory of that summer day was so vivid, a stark contrast to the frozen nightmare she now inhabited. She had been picking wild berries near Willow Creek when the rustle in the undergrowth turned into the terrifying growl of a grizzly bear. Fear had rooted her to the spot. But then, an arrow had hissed through the air, embedding itself in the ground near the beast's paws. It was not a killing shot, but a warning. The bear, startled, had lumbered away. Her savior was a young Cheyenne hunter, his face serene, his movements fluid and confident. He had introduced himself as Chayton. That meant Falcon. Their meetings had become a secret ritual. By the creek, away from the judgmental eyes of the settlement, they found a world of their own. He showed her how to read tracks in the dirt, how to listen to the language of the birds. He spoke of his people's ways, of a life lived in harmony with the land, not in a constant battle against it. Eliza, in turn, shared books with him, reading aloud tales of distant lands and forgotten kings. She spoke of her dream, of a place where two people could stand together without fear or prejudice, a dream he seemed to understand completely. Her younger brother, Jacob, was not blind. He saw the new light in Eliza's eyes, the mud on her dress from her long walks. He was a quiet boy, caught between the love for his vibrant sister and the fear of their stern, unyielding father. He never spoke of his suspicions, but Eliza saw the worry in his gaze. Sometimes, he would cover for her, inventing chores that took her away from the house. This silent conspiracy was a heavy burden on his young shoulders, a secret that strained the air in their small home, thick with unspoken words and the ever-present shadow of their father's grief. "You are a part of this land, Eliza," Chayton had told her once, his hand gently touching the bark of a cottonwood tree. "Not its master. Your people build fences to keep the wild out, but the wild is what makes us strong." His words had resonated deep within her soul. He was not the savage of her father's dark tales. He was noble and kind, and he saw the world with a clarity she had never known. Their love was not a disgrace. It was the most real and beautiful thing in her life. It was a truth she would have defended to her father if only he had been willing to listen. Barlow was a man who measured his worth by the acreage of others. His own ranch was arid and stubborn, while the Cartwrights' land was green and blessed by the creek. He watched them with the hungry eyes of a coyote. He had seen Eliza more than once, slipping away toward the woods, and his small, mean mind began to spin a web. He saw his opportunity not just for land, but for influence. By exposing Eliza, he could indebt the proud August Cartwright to him, positioning himself as a loyal friend in a time of crisis. He bided his time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He found his moment on a Sunday, after the church service. He approached August with a mask of grave concern. "August, as your neighbor and friend, I must speak. I have seen things. Your daughter, she meets with a Cheyenne buck down by the river. They are familiar." He let the words hang in the air, each one a drop of poison. He twisted the innocent meetings into a tale of conspiracy and dishonor, painting Chayton as a cunning savage and Eliza as a witless fool who was endangering them all. He knew exactly which fears to feed in the older man's heart. The confrontation was an explosion of fury. August's face was a thundercloud. "You have brought heathens to my doorstep. You have lain with the very filth that took your mother," he roared, his fist crashing down on the dinner table. Eliza tried to speak, to explain, but her words were swept away by his rage. "He is a good man, father! He saved my life!" she cried, her voice trembling. "Saved you? He has damned you, and he has damned this family!" Jacob stepped forward, his face pale. "Father, please, listen to her." August turned on him with a glare that silenced him instantly. "You will hold your tongue, boy, or you will join her." Barlow's plan had worked perfectly. He had ignited the fuse and now stood back to watch the fire. August, blinded by rage and skillfully manipulated, saw only betrayal. He saw the face of a Crow warrior in Chayton, and the weakness of his first wife in his own daughter's defiance. The complex truth was lost, replaced by a simple, brutal narrative of good versus evil, settler versus savage. In his mind, he was not just punishing his daughter. He was purging his house of a spiritual sickness. He was restoring order. And Eliza was the price to be paid. The next morning, a man arrived at the ranch. He was tall and lean, with eyes the color of a winter sky. He moved with a quiet economy, his presence filling the room without a single wasted motion. He introduced himself simply as Blackwood. He was not a lawman in the traditional sense, but a man who found things for a price. A tracker. August explained the situation in clipped, cold tones, carefully omitting his own role in Eliza's departure. "My daughter has been taken by a Cheyenne brave. I want her found. I want her returned." Blackwood listened, his expression unreadable. He looked at the frantic grief on August's face and saw the lie beneath it. He had seen this play before. A family's shame, repackaged as an outrage for public consumption. "The territory is wide, Mr. Cartwright. The weather is against us." His voice was flat, a businessman discussing terms. August's eyes hardened. "I am not a poor man, Mr. Blackwood. I want this problem resolved. I want it known that my family was wronged by these savages." The unspoken command was clear. He did not just want his daughter found. He wanted a story written in blood. Blackwood nodded slowly. "I understand the situation completely. My fee will be considerable, given the circumstances." He was not interested in justice or revenge. He was a professional, and this was a contract. His job was to deliver a narrative that August could use to rally the territory against the local tribes, a narrative that would cleanse the Cartwright name and, perhaps, open up new lands for settlement. Eliza was not a person to him. She was a piece of the contract, a loose end to be tied up neatly and permanently. He would find her. Of that, there was no doubt. Meanwhile, Miles away, Eliza's world had shrunk to the agonizing rhythm of her own breathing. The snow was no longer cold. It was a burning, numbing weight. Consciousness was a flickering candle flame, and the wind was determined to snuff it out. Her last coherent thought was a simple, heartbreaking question. Was there anyone in the whole world who would mourn her? Then, even that faded, and she sank into the deep, white silence, unaware of the hunter who was now on her trail. A man hired to erase her not just from the world but from memory itself. Through the driving snow, a figure moved with the grace of a hunting wolf. It was Conan, a warrior of the Apache. His people were far from their sun-scorched homelands in the south, driven north by the relentless advance of soldiers and fences. They were ghosts in a foreign land, seeking a place where they could simply exist. He was tracking a lean deer when he saw it, a small mound in the snow that did not belong. He approached with caution, his hand resting on the hilt of his knife. He expected a trap, or perhaps a fallen settler. He did not expect to find a young woman, half frozen and barely alive. He knelt beside her, his weathered face a mask of contemplation. He had seen what the white man's justice looked like. He had seen his own wife and son cut down in a raid on their peaceful camp, a raid justified by a stolen horse. This girl, what could she have done to earn such a fate from her own kind? He saw the fine quality of her dress, the softness of her hands. She was not a woman of the hard frontier. She was a creature of warmth and comfort, cast out into the frozen hell. A flicker of something, not pity but a shared understanding of loss, stirred within him. He lifted her into his arms. She was as light as a bundle of dry sticks. Carrying her back to his camp was a risk. His people were already on edge, hungry and cold. A white woman in their midst would be seen as a threat, a beacon that could draw soldiers to their hidden refuge. A warrior named Makia, whose heart was a stone of hatred for all settlers, would surely object. Makia believed that any act of mercy toward a white person was an act of suicide for their own people. Conan knew the argument that awaited him. When he entered the sheltered camp, nestled in a rocky overhang, all eyes turned to him. As predicted, Makia stepped forward, his face dark with fury. "What is this, Conan? Have you brought the serpent into our nest?" he demanded, his voice ringing through the small camp. "She is a child, cast out to die," Conan replied, his voice low but firm. "She is not a warrior," Makia sneered. "She is white. That is all the warrior she needs to be. Her people will follow, and they will not care if she was dying. They will only care that we have her." Conan ignored Makia's venomous words and carried Eliza to the wickiup of Tala, the camp's old healer. Tala's face was a road map of seasons and sorrows. She looked from the frozen girl to Conan, her dark eyes holding a question. Conan simply said, "She was alone." It was all the explanation needed. Without a word, Tala began her work. She directed the other women to bring warm furs and heated stones. She crushed herbs in a small bowl, the sharp, clean scent filling the air. Her hands, though gnarled with age, were steady and sure as she began to tend to Eliza. Outside, the debate raged. Makia's voice was a sharp spear, piercing the quiet of the camp. "He brings our doom upon us for a white woman. Has he forgotten what they did to his own family? Has he forgotten the broken treaties and the stolen land?" Some of the younger warriors murmured in agreement. Fear was a powerful motivator, and Makia knew how to use it. They were a small band, a handful of survivors. The risk Conan had taken felt immense, a gamble with all of their lives as the stake. They had found a fragile peace here, and now it seemed threatened. Conan finally emerged from the healer's lodge. He stood before the fire, his gaze sweeping over the anxious faces. "I have not forgotten," he said, his voice quiet but carrying an authority that silenced the camp. "I see their faces in my dreams every night, but I will not become them. We do not leave the helpless to the mercy of the storm. We do not let our hearts turn to stone. If we do that, then they have already won. We lose our spirit, and that is a greater death than any bullet." He looked directly at Makia. "Her life is under my protection." His words settled the matter for now. Conan standing among them was too great to be openly defied. But the tension remained. a low hum of anxiety beneath the surface of camp life. They posted extra lookouts, their eyes scanning the snow-covered ridges for any sign of pursuit. Every snap of a frozen branch, every cry of a distant bird sounded like a warning. Eliza, drifting in and out of a feverish sleep, was unaware that she was not just a patient, but the very eye of a storm brewing within the small, desperate community that had saved her. When Eliza finally awoke, the first thing she saw was the intricate pattern of the woven shelter above her. The air smelled of wood smoke and strange, pungent herbs. A face leaned over her, old and deeply lined, but the eyes were kind. It was Tala, who offered her a sip of warm, bitter broth. Later, Conan came. He sat silently by her side for a long time before speaking. He did not ask what had happened. Instead, he told her of his own journey, of the land he had lost. In his quiet words, she heard the echo of her own sorrow, the pain of being exiled from the only world she had ever known. In the days that followed, a fragile bond formed between them. They were two people from different worlds, united by the common language of loss. She learned a few words of his language. He practiced his formal English. She watched him carve a small wooden bird for a child, his powerful hands surprisingly gentle. He watched her mend a torn shirt with a skill his own people admired. She began to see the community around her not as savages but as families, people who loved and feared and mourned, just like her own. The fear in her heart began to be replaced by a cautious sense of belonging. Back at the Cartwright Ranch, Jacob was living in his own private hell. The silence in the house was a deafening roar of guilt. One night, unable to sleep, he crept down the stairs and heard voices from his father's study. It was August and Barlow, their words low and laced with whiskey. Blackwood is the best. He will be discreet. By spring, when the thaw comes, they will find what the savages left of her. Jacob's blood ran cold. It was not a rescue. It was a murder contract. His father had not just cast his sister out. He had hired a man to hunt her down and kill her. In that moment, something inside Jacob snapped. The fear he had always felt for his father was consumed by a tidal wave of revulsion and love for his sister. He did not think. He only acted. He slipped out to the barn, his movements swift and silent. He saddled his fastest horse, grabbing a bedroll and a pouch of dried meat. He did not know where he was going or what he would find. He only knew he had to try. He rode out into the cold, dark night, a boy on an impossible quest. His only guide the desperate hope that he could outrun the monster his father had unleashed. Marshall Blackwood was a man of patience. He did not believe in noisy, chaotic pursuits. He believed in the quiet, methodical art of the hunt. He found the tracks of the lone Apache warrior carrying a burden. The trail was clear to his expert eyes. He followed at a distance, a shadow on the horizon. He was not alone. He had hired 2 other men in a nearby town, quiet professionals like himself, men who understood the value of discretion and did not ask unnecessary questions. They were not a posse. They were a scalpel, designed for a clean, surgical removal. From a high ridge, using a spyglass, Blackwood observed the Apache camp. He noted its layout, the number of warriors, the placement of the lookouts. He saw the white woman, pale but alive, moving slowly around the fire. His face remained impassive. This complicated the contract slightly. A live target was more difficult than a body to be discovered. But the core of the mission remained the same. He needed to take her, and he needed to make it look like a violent abduction. There would need to be a struggle, a convincing one. His plan was simple and brutal. They would not attack the camp head-on. That would be messy and unpredictable. Instead, they would wait for the deep chill just before dawn, when the lookouts were tired and the camp was at its most vulnerable. They would create a diversion on one side of the camp, a sudden noise to draw attention. In that moment of confusion, Blackwood himself would slip in from the other side, go directly to the woman, and take her. He would be gone before most of the camp even realized what was happening. It was a plan built on precision and psychological shock. "We move before the sun touches the peaks," he told his men, his voice a low whisper in the cold air. "No shooting unless absolutely necessary. We are ghosts. We go in, we take the girl, and we are gone. The less they see of us, the more they will blame each other or a rival band. Let their own fear and hatred do the work for us." He cleaned his revolver with meticulous care, not out of nervousness, but out of professional habit. To him, this was just another job. A difficult one, perhaps, but one for which he was being paid very well. The pre-dawn air was still and painfully cold. A sudden crash echoed from the eastern edge of the camp, a carefully thrown rock clattering down a stone face. As expected, the attention of the Apache warriors was drawn to the sound. In that fleeting moment of distraction, 3 figures emerged from the shadows on the western side, moving with a chilling purpose. Blackwood strode into the center of the camp, his long coat sweeping behind him. His 2 men flanked him, their firearms held ready. "I am here for the white woman," Blackwood announced, his voice cutting through the silence. "Give her to me, and you will live to see the sunrise." Conan and the other warriors reacted instantly, grabbing their own weapons. They formed a protective circle, but they were outnumbered and caught by surprise. Eliza, her heart pounding in her chest, recognized the cold authority of men like her father. These were not soldiers. They were something far more dangerous. "I will not let you take her," Conan said, his voice low and steady, positioning himself in front of Eliza. Blackwood offered a humorless smile. "You mistake this for a negotiation. It is not." The standoff was electric, a single spark away from erupting into violence. At that precise moment, a horse and rider burst into the camp, the animal exhausted and stumbling. It was Jacob. His face was gaunt, his eyes wild with fear and desperation. He saw his sister, saw the men threatening her, and slid from his horse. "Eliza!" he cried out, his voice cracking. He ran toward her, his only thought to get to her side. His sudden appearance shattered the tense standoff. It was a variable Blackwood had not accounted for. Frustration flickered across the tracker's face. The clean operation was becoming messy. Losing his patience, Blackwood raised his revolver, aiming not at Conan, but directly at Eliza. "Enough of this. You are coming with me, girl." He took a step forward. Everything seemed to move in slow motion. Jacob, seeing the firearm leveled at his sister, did not hesitate. With a cry, he threw himself in front of Eliza, creating a human shield. The world was reduced to a single deafening roar as Blackwood's weapon discharged. Jacob's body stiffened, a look of profound surprise on his face before he collapsed at his sister's feet. For a heartbeat, the entire world stood still. The sound of the shot echoed off the canyon walls and then faded, leaving a silence more profound than any before. The sight of the boy falling, the senselessness of it, shocked everyone. Even Blackwood's hired men faltered, their cold professionalism shattered by the raw, unexpected tragedy. Eliza let out a cry of pure anguish, falling to her knees beside her brother, his name, a broken whisper on her lips. In that moment of hesitation, the spell of fear that Blackwood had cast was broken. Rage, pure and absolute, surged through Conan. This was not a battle for territory or honor. This was a desecration. He launched himself at Blackwood, not with a warrior's cry, but with a guttural roar of fury. The attack was so swift and ferocious that Blackwood was knocked off his feet before he could fire again. The 2 men crashed to the ground in a desperate struggle. It was not a graceful fight, but a brutal, close-quarters brawl for survival. Conan, fueled by righteous anger, fought with the strength of a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to protect. Seeing their leader engaged and their will broken, Blackwood's men backed away. They had signed on for a quiet abduction, not a bloody war over a boy's life. They faded back into the shadows from which they came, leaving their employer to his fate. Conan, his hands closing around Blackwood's wrist, twisted with a sharp crack. The revolver fell to the snow. The fight was over. Conan stood over the disarmed and defeated tracker, his chest heaving. He did not kill him. He simply turned his back and walked away, a gesture of contempt more damning than any blade. They buried Jacob on a high bluff overlooking the valley, wrapping him in the finest blanket the Apache possessed. Tala sang a song for his spirit's journey. There were no more arguments in the camp, only a shared, solemn grief. They knew they could not stay. August Cartwright would send more men, perhaps soldiers this time. With heavy hearts they packed their meager belongings. As the sun began to set, the small band of survivors, led by Conan and a heartbroken Eliza, turned their faces to the north. Their path was uncertain, but they walked it together, forever bound by a sacrifice that had bought them a future, at a cost too terrible to measure.